All right. Well, the players are sat in the feature match area and they're getting set up. So we're going to cut down to there and we're going to let them start playing whenever they're ready. It looks like they're already going. So
Yeah.
Murktide here looks like they're on the play. Islands on the battlefield, and Thoughtseize is taking Unholy Heat.
So we see a good choice of counterspell here from Dillingham. I like the Mercadian Masks counterspell.
Yeah, it's also foreign. Looks nice.
I lean Tempest myself, but Mercadian Masks is a fine choice. And the Beta Island.
All right, it looks like they paused them while we were in the middle of a Thoughtseize, but we're going to let them know that they can go ahead and go, and then they'll continue here.
That's a great choice of basic. That's the island I often play.
Is that beta?
Yeah.
That's nice. Those are expensive now, aren't they?
They're if there's depending on condition, like 30 to 50 bucks.
Yeah. Are they in the do you know if they're in the collector's 30-year edition or whatever?
No idea.
Yeah.
So the rest of Dylan's hand, I see a Ledger Shredder there. We got some cantrips and a counterspell. So, a really solid opening 7 had, really everything you want, and then finds a replacement removal spell immediately. You got to figure there's a, either a Ragavan or a Jothi Voidwalker coming down if Parker takes the Unholy Heat with Thoughtseize. So immediately finding a Lightning Bolt and puts that one into his hand, even though the threat isn't on the battlefield yet.
All right, we're going to get the clock started here. The clock is at 50, should be ticking down. A pass on the turn here, the Consider kept the card on top. That Lightning Bolt is going to potentially protect them from the Jothi Voidwalker, like you said. We'll see if Jonathan Parker has a better play in mind.
Has a second Thoughtseize here. Wonder if this one gets counterspelled.
I don't hate it.
I guess you can just counter the Ragavan if it gets cast here.
That's true, that's true. And the 2 damage matters. You want that 2 damage to get hit through.
Yeah. Parker does take the counterspell.
All right, has a pretty good turn 3 lined up, though, potentially. Oh, my Lanta. So we're going to go with Grief. Now, the way this is stacked, this is a really troublesome interaction for those of you watching at home. The Grief evoke trigger is on the stack, and the discard trigger is on the stack, and they're separate. So you can do the discard first, take the Lightning Bolt, and then before the evoke trigger goes off and kills it, a Malkia Rebirth or similar lets it come back.
Here we go. Here's Consider. Can we find another red removal spell? Bins of Delta, and that's a Brazen Borrower.
All right, let's see what he decides to take.
I imagine we take the Borrower here since I can bounce the Grief after it comes back.
You really want to bounce Grief?
Instead takes Ledger Shredder.
Yeah, the Ledgerman. I believe Rebirth makes it come back tapped, so that's why you see it tapped there.
Yeah, and it's going to have Parker lose 2 life. So between the 2 Thoughtseizes, the Rebirth, and a Fetch is at 13.
Yeah, but, the damage is done. Dillingham has no resources left. Just a 3rd land and a Brazen Borrower versus this Grief, and still with a couple of cards in hand on Parker's side.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a Petty Theft, and that's another land drawn from Ham, which honestly is not the worst against the Grief.
JP drew a Terminate for turn, so has an answer to a Murktide off the top. Grief going to get bounced. We'll see if he wants to pitch cast it again or play something else.
Here's a Voidwalker. No 3rd land, though, so ways away from recasting that Grief. Might have to pitch cast it.
Well, it might not care about pitch casting it, considering Dillingham has no cards in hand, and you have a Terminate to check the most powerful card in the deck and Murktide region.
Yeah.
Here comes the Borer.
It's weird to me. Like, if you had taken the Brazen Borrower, you got the Ledger Shredder wasn't going to do a whole lot because there's just no spells left for Ham.
All right, gonna burn the Terminate on the Brazen Borrower.
Brazen Borrower getting exiled there because of the Voidwalker, so that's why I didn't get put in the graveyard.
Now, 2 islands in play from Ham's side. John Parker did draw a Blood Moon, but can't cast it yet, and not that effective.
Yeah, looks like a hand of Grief, Blood Moon, Fury, and Seasoned Pyromancer there for Jonathan Parker, so plenty of gas left over while Ham is flooding a bit.
Yep. Peeled Ragavan, that's going to get countered. Counterspell does get exiled, so now the Jothi Voidwalker is kind of a split card. Brazen Borrower or Counterspell.
There's a Spell Pierce left over in Ham's hand, not a great card, but Expressive Iteration is excellent.
And finds the answer to the Jothi Voidwalker with Unholy Heat. So we're going to have Voidwalker answered. Another Expressive Iteration in hand for next turn. This is good stuff.
Yeah, Unholy Heat also gets exiled from the Voidwalker because Unholy Heat tries to go to the graveyard before state-based actions are taken.
You can just say Wizardry. It through sheer wizardry and rules lawyering. The Unholy Heat is also exiled.
So another Voidwalker off the top for Parker is nice, but this other iteration finds another Unholy Heat.
Unholy Heat.
Oh, that iteration should be exiled.
Yeah, we'll fix it. That's fine. The Unholy Heat find is really crucial here. It's going to take care of the Voidwalker before any shenanigans can happen because it does maintain all of the cards that get exiled from previous Voidwalkers.
Yeah. So plays the Channeler first. Gets likes what he sees on top. Keeps it with the Surveil and has a Fiery Islet, which will probably immediately get cashed in, but on the end step.
Right.
So the card you draw can't get taken by a discard spell. And yeah, Ham looks like he's come back pretty well because Parker stumbled on his mana, but there's finally the third land. So we get to see some Pyromancer. I imagine Blood Moon at least gets pitched.
I would have loved to see
And the Grief.
Okay. I would have loved to have seen the Fury get cast here to kill the Dragon Rage Channeler, and then the Seasoned Pyromancer gets to go up on a card. But instead, John Parker choosing here to hold on to the Fury for later.
You're so close to hard casting the Fury.
You're not that close. You just played your third land this turn.
You're drawing 2 cards.
Yeah. All right, 2 elementals made, though. Somewhat important for pressuring.
And the Voidwalker exiling all those cards means I don't think we have Delirium yet. Ham immediately untaps, found a Bolt on top, kept that, upkeeps it, so he gets to Surveil before he draws. Smart. Bins a Spire Bluff Canal and finds another Channeler. But yeah, these Channelers are just 1/1s.
Yeah, they are not quite delirious yet.
I think we have land instant creature in the big graveyard. But yeah, the Mishra's, there was a Mishra's Bauble that got put on the bottom from an iteration, and both iterations got exiled, so there was no sorcery.
Thought the Voidwalker as just kind of a static Leyline of the Void. Pretty sweet.
Yeah. So because we've already gone through 2 iterations and 1 Bauble, so there's only 5 more cards that can give Ham Delirium here. Yeah, Spell Pierces the Thoughtseize, even though that'll give Parker 2 life because he'd rather have 2 Surveils. Bins 2 bad ones, so great choice from Ham. And at this point, we're probably just going to stare at each other until Parker can find 5 lands for this Fury.
Well, I don't mind John Parker attacking because once the 2 Dragon Rage Channelers get delirious, the game turns dramatically. Yeah. And that extra 2 damage might let you, do something cool on a future turn.
I think Parker knows he's a little ahead now, so he'd rather not trade damage if it's just 2 for 2. And there is the 5th land. We had Castle Lock going last turn, Polluted Delta this turn.
Archmage's Charm, we're going to draw 2, probably, and that's going to get 2 Surveils, so we're trying to get Delirious here. Interesting he didn't go for a main phase on it, right? I feel like that would have been pretty good.
Finds and keeps an Unholy Heat, which is interesting. Yeah, doesn't have Delirium, so just fires it off. Still trying to get more Surveils.
There it is.
There's the ball.
Finally. And now we're going to block the token.
So because it was an Unholy Heat, there's only 1 damage across 6 toughness, so the Fury's only going to be able to take 1 of these Channelers out.
Yeah.
But it also represents 6 damage.
Right. And taking out the 3/3 on the other side, Dylan Ham's low on resources. Jonathan Parker has essentially what is a 6/3 creature coming through next turn. That's a 2-turn clock, whereas Dylan Ham's clock is a little bit shorter.
Yeah. Would have been interesting if Ham found like a cantrip there to Surveil and get Delirium, because then he probably blocks both 1/1s.
Right.
And then the Fury can take both of them out. And now, I don't know how many, I think we've gone through at least 2 Unholy Heats, maybe 3.
Archmage's Charm.
Charm is a good one.
I will see if he main phases or plays it here before damage to try to find another Unholy Heat. Looks like John Parker drew a Thoughtseize. I'm not sure if he wants it right now. Draws 2 lands and a 3rd in hand. Not great.
Yeah, Surveil to Ragavan that wasn't very good into the graveyard.
And now, notably, the DRC has to attack, so it's not going to be able to chump block next turn to save. So without an answer here or a blocker, the game's going to end.
Well, we didn't see an immediate concession. I think Ham drew something relevant. It's a Lightning Bolt.
Wow. All right, we're going to make 2 tokens
here. These 2 tokens with Ham at 4 is still a 2-turn clock. And Parker's at 4, so the DRC isn't lethal yet.
Yeah, drew another Fury, too. We're going to bang the drum. Bolt's going to take care of the Fury. We get a Surveil. Let's see what the top card is. It needs to be Expressive Iteration, I think.
Or just another Bolt.
Oh, well, yeah, that's fair, too. 2 damage comes in, and the Fury here going to take down the DRC.
Oh, yeah. Well, so the DRC dying means another Bolt isn't good enough because of the Fury.
Right.
And,
back it up.
Nothing relevant on top for Ham, and a surprisingly close game given how good Parker's start was, but wasn't able to follow it up with a lot of pressure because he was stuck on 2 lands, and I think got punished for taking the Ledger Shredder with the other with the Grief instead of the Brazen Bar.
Right.
If that Grief just stuck around and was plunking in, it either does a bunch of damage or eats another removal spell so one of the later threat sticks. And that Shredder would have just eaten a Terminate.
No, I agree. The Shredder is like, it's a weird card in the deck because unlike Pioneer, you don't have access to big bursts of card advantage like Treasure Cruise. Expressive Iteration is great, but it doesn't fill your hand. And Shredder is excellent in situations where your hand is full and you get to kind of pick and choose whether you want to grow it by discarding a somewhat useless or redundant spell, or if you just want to filter some lands away and turn your hand in a little bit cleaner, more interactive, more threat dense.
Yeah.
But when you're getting Grief and Thoughtseize and your hand's gone, Shredder's just bad.
Completely agree. So taking a look at these players' sideboards from Dylan Ham, we've got 2 Blood Moons, a Brotherhood's End, 2 Dress Down, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Flusterstorm, a Fury, 2 Mystical Dispute, 2 Subtlety, and an Unlicensed Hearse. I like the pitch cards. I think Fury and Subtlety can be very powerful.
Yeah, I agree.
Just catching up from the tempo that the scam deck does. Subtlety can just stop an early scam as well. Unlicensed Hearse seems reasonable at stopping scammy things.
Yeah, it keeps all the Undying stuff from coming back.
Yeah, and can also just be a threat. So I like those. And not much else there. The counter spells are bad. EE Dress Down, this isn't the matchup for them. Blood.
Yeah, as long as you just fetch around Blood Moon getting islands or early game, like, I don't even think Spell Pierce is that necessary. The deck has thoughts, like a bunch of 1-mana things, like the Malakir Rebirth type things and the Thought Seizes and some removal spells. But Spell Pierce is traditionally great against decks like Creativity, where they have to like tap out on turn 4 for like a big thing.
Yep. And from Jonathan Parker, we've got 1 Brotherhood's End, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Fatal Push, a Flame Blitz, 1 Hidetsugu Consumes All, a Magus of the Moon, a Necromentia, 2 Obnixilis, the Adversary, 2 Surgical Extraction, and 2 Unlicensed Hearse. Again, I kind of like the Hearses just to control the graveyard. Maybe you want Obnixilis as sort of a grindy card, but the rest of it doesn't seem great. I think Fatal Push is solid. We got a lot of cheap creatures to target, but that's not a huge upgrade. And I honestly don't know what Flame Blitz does.
I was actually going to ask my man Taryn over here on the back if he could hook me up with a little bit of Flame Blitz action on screen, because I'm sure there's some people at home who don't know what that is either.
Oh, that's this card. At the beginning of your end step, dealing 5 damage to all Planeswalkers. It's a 1-mana enchantment.
That's cool. Yeah.
Cycling 2. Yeah, no Planeswalkers here to hit, so we can get that card out.
Thunderwalk says Obnixilis is for Burn in the Mirror. I don't like that card very much, to be honest.
Yeah, kind of a disappointing card.
But everyone thought it was going to be the next Oko. I remember Evan Irwin was on Twitter shouting from the rooftops, "Oh man, this card's so broken. I played it in 1 game of best of 1 on Arena, and it was so good." And then
players are shuffled up here, looking at their hands. We do see the Fury in Ham's opener, so brought that one in.
Ham leading off with Spirebluff Canal. No play. We'll see if John Parker has a Thoughtseize or something. Looks like he's got the Grief. I wonder if he's got the full scam.
Pitches Terminate for that, and
all right, hand of 2 lands, a Fury, a Dress Down, an Expressive Iteration, and a Ledger Shredder.
Ham did bring in the Dress Downs. That's another card that can like stop some scam nonsense, and it comes at a low cost since it cycles, so that's reasonable. Also helps you get Delirium.
Yeah, this is so brutal though. The Undying Evil, bringing the Grief back, making a second card taken from Ham's hand, and he's taking the card advantage of Expressive Iteration and leaving him with the threats that he can answer with Fatal Push.
Ham just casts a Shredder here, and just doesn't really have leftovers. The Dress Down is going to be too late to really do anything. I like the takes from Parker there, getting rid of the Iteration and the Fury. I think those are the 2 best cards in Ham's hand.
Interesting. Parker had the option to go for Fatal Push plus Ragavan, opts to go for the Unlicensed Hearse instead to essentially keep Dylan Ham from ever being able to cast Murktide Regent. So I guess he's just prioritizing Murktide above everything, and that's fine. You can get it down now while Dylan Ham's tapped out, and then the Murktide basically just never exists for the rest of the game.
Yeah, there's not a lot of ways that Ham has to catch back up in this game, so I like Parker taking lines to cut those outs as much as he can.
Now that the Grief is on the battlefield, a Lightning Bolt from Dylan Ham would normally be able to kill it, but if John Parker just has another one of those Malakir Rebirth type cards, removal is useless.
Yeah, and Unholy Heat's not going to do it, especially with the hearse controlling the graveyard now.
Right.
Parker
Yeah, extra toughness is huge.
Yeah. Parker, once again, doesn't have a third land, but because Ham doesn't have an answer to the Grief, I don't think that's going to matter much this game.
All right, we're going to EOT consider. No third land from JP, but does have a Fatal Push in hand, so can maybe take care of the Shredder.
Decides to bin an Archmage's Charm off the Surveil from Consider. That's normally a nice one to have, like as many 2-for-1s as you can get, really, but realizes he doesn't really have the time to deploy it with how much pressure he's under.
Gonna go for an aggressive dress down. This is just to loot.
Yeah, loot and cycle, so I like that.
Parker's gonna take this time to eat it with a Fatal Push and chew up the graveyard a little bit with the hearse. Hearse is gonna go up to 4 ticks.
Wisely did all that in Parker's second main phase, so the dress down goes away. Yeah, still no answers, I think. Trying to get a look at Ham's hand.
It looked like he had a bunch of lands, but subtlety here is a heater.
Okay. That'll stop the Rogavan, and if we can get another creature, maybe we can get a double block on the Grief.
All right, now we get to choose top or bottom. I think bottom's the play. But the Grief does have menace, so it can still chunk in. Dylan Ham unable to answer it as of right now.
Ham falls to 8 from this attack.
Subtlety is a cool card. It is probably the least sung of the pitch elementals from Modern Horizons 2, but still powerful nonetheless.
I'm surprised not to see any activations from this hearse, because we have enough to cast a Murktide Regent.
Right.
Ooh, Hazarogman goes for a dash, though.
All right, a bash for 5.
Interesting.
We're going to find Inquisition of Kozilek, or is that Torok?
That is a Torok.
All right. So we're going to use the treasure to cast it immediately. First is going to eat the graveyard a bit. This is also going to contain Delirium as well for the DRCs, so the graveyard here just absolutely obliterated.
I believe there's a Fury and a Pyromancer in hand, yeah. So Fury gets evoked here. That's going to deal with both creatures on the battlefield for Ham. And can crew the hearse. Yes, crew the hearse before you sacrifice it.
And that's game.
Yep, that's a 10-point attack.
Yeah, and a quick 2-0. John Parker takes it down. There's a reason why he's on the leaderboard. There's a reason why he's playing Scam. You know, he was talking us up all weekends, about his Bitter Blossom creativity deck that he 5-0, 10-0'd in a Magic Online League earlier this week. Couldn't pull the trigger. Decided to go for the coward's way out and play Scam.
Well,
and
so far it's
scamming it up.
And it's Modern's been around for a long time, and we've had a long history of Thoughtseize against Counterspell matchups. Whether it was Jund versus Twin or Scam versus Murktide, and usually the Thoughtseize decks are pretty good against the Counterspell decks.
Yeah, there's like a couple of like those age-old wisdom type things that you learn when you play Magic, and it's Thoughtseize usually beats blue decks, but Jace the Mind Sculptor beats the Liliana the Veil.